okay, if someone really is like the common parent situation sometimes where they're like mourning their their straight child, or like mourning who they thought their kid was gender wise, right? It's like being an ally is like, even if you are doing that mourning, doing it in private,
Yeah.
not sharing that with your child, like
Yep.
deal with that on your own, and do not put that on your child as they are exploring who they are as a
Right.
person.
They're dealing with other stuff. Like that's on you time, right?
Hmm.
The other thing that I think that gets at as well is that and then I think like Tyrell's statement touches on as well is like the willingness to grow and change yourself, right? So it's like, yes, obviously, like your kid comes out to you, you've had this whole picture in your head of what their life was going to be, and you don't know anything about gay people, and like, yeah, maybe you're having those moments, right, where you're like, wow, this forces me to like mourn a vision that I had and like change my own views on stuff and like think about, all this stuff. And it's like, okay, fine, but like also,
Hmm.
also, that is part of being a good ally. And it's like, there's something to be said for like, sometimes I feel like the smallest things that straight people can do as allies is to not only like, what's the way I want to say this? Sometimes when like straight people are like, I'm like totally an ally, but then they don't know a single thing about queer culture. And I'm like, how could you be? Like, how could you be if you're not tuned in at all? Like, if
Okay,
nothing
but
about.
I'm curiously, what to you is tuned into queer culture as like we are so tuned into queer culture?
We
Like
are very tuned into queer culture, but I
what's the
just
like
mean,
minimum you would like from a straight person to understand about queer culture to feel like, I'm
I
just curious.
there's no one answer to that. I think the answer to me is it depends on who the queer people in their lives are. But I think that what it means is like taking an interest in the things that are important to the queer people in their lives and
Yeah.
how they relate to queer culture. So it's like if your daughter comes out and is like super into women's soccer and you don't bother to learn anything about it, then like you're not being a great ally to your
Hmm.
kid. If your best friend is gay and like all they want to talk about is the ultimatum for 3 weeks and you can't even watch a trailer, then like are you a good are you a good
And you
ally?
haven't been to the entire
Like
series? That's actually
right,
so
no,
fun. That's like
but it's
so
like but
funny to
I
me, but true. No, it's
here's the thing is like I don't think straight people always understand how much of the straight zeitgeist we keep up with for them. Like
well, and
we
yeah.
know all of the stuff that is going on in straight culture because we have to, right? And because you can't exist in like your general day-to-day networking spaces, offices, whatever. Like we all know what's kind of going on. But when you're saying like, and I'm not saying every straight person has to be tuned in. I'm saying if you are a straight person who has queer people in your life that you love and care about and you want to tell yourself that you are an ally to them and there is stuff that matters to them and you don't care about it at all, that feels suspicious to me when you say you're an ally. Like, realistically, like, let's talk about you and me, right? Like, I understand
Yes.
you and I are incredibly plugged into queer culture. I do
Yes.
not expect that every single one of my straight friends who calls themselves an ally is going to watch every fucking show I talk about, listen to every fucking musical artist that I'm into. Like, I don't expect that. But there's certain stuff where it's like, do I know and does it still somehow matter to me which one of my friends bothered to listen to even an episode of The Flame?
Yes.
Yeah, like because
Well,
that's a
I
thing
think
that we
that's a
devoted a huge amount of our time and lives and energy and like like that's a thing that I'm like if you're a straight person and you have a queer friend who like did a thing that's a queer thing and you can't even bring yourself to like care enough to listen to it, is it the end of the world? No, of course it's not the end of the world. It just means that when
but
you're
you're,
like,
yeah.
I'm
I'm
such a
an
good
ally.
ally to you, I'd be like,
Well,
well,
I find it interesting that you're talking about this because we are so focused on queer media,
yes,
But on a larger scale, right, of course, like for us personally, like we created this thing. Yeah, if like you donated to our campaign, like that's like putting
Right.
literal
Yes.
money into a queer project that's independent. But like even if it's not us, right? Like the reason half of our shows get canceled is because not enough people are
Yep.
watching them, right?
Yep.
And if you know that your friend is queer and like how impactful it is to see
Yeah.
themselves on screen, and you know that literally just putting your eyeballs onto a show like A League of Their Own
Yeah.
means the world to that one person and also to the queer community, and you
It's so
don't,
small.
it's
It's so
so
easy.
small, and it's so small. And the crazy thing is too, like, I mean, I think about this on like a smaller scale sometimes, like same thing with like some of my shows or whatever. Like my mom will say this and she'll be like, yeah, I always like tell people to come to your shows and like whatever, and they're like, oh, like they're coming to support, and then they're like, oh, that was actually really good. And my mom's like, yeah, I'm not telling you to support this thing just to support
Right.
it. I actually think you would thoroughly enjoy it.